Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this lecture. I'm really delighted to introduce to you two of my dear colleagues. First, Professor Youssef Bokbot, who is professor at the Institut National des Sciences de l'Archéologie du Patrimoine in Rabat in Morocco. And for those of you who don't know him, but there are many of you here who do, Youssef is of course one of the most important prehistorians working in North Africa at the moment, especially obviously in Morocco, in the Saharan regions, but also elsewhere. So we're really excited to have you here with us, beaming in from Morocco today. So thank you, Youssef, for coming. And Youssef and we'll be talking with my other colleague, Sam Nixon, who is one of the leading medieval archaeologists working in the Sahara. Many of you will know his work previously in Mali at the site of Tadmeka, which has transformed our understanding of the early Islamic Saharan trade, particularly the gold trade. But now he and Youssef are working together in Morocco on the Djbel Bani. I should just add that Sam is currently curator at the British Museum and head of the Africa section. He's also one of our council members of the Society for Libyan Studies. So we're very pleased to hear from him today. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sam and Youssef, who are going to talk to us today about their new work at the Djbel Bani project in the Moroccan Sahara. Thank you, Sam and Youssef.
Thank you very much, Khorassand. Great to not to see everybody, but to, you know, metaphorically speaking, see everybody. And this is a great opportunity for us to present this project. So Youssef and myself presenting on behalf, obviously, of the wider team involved in the Djbel Bani Archaeology Project. So we're going to be obviously jointly presenting this. So I'll be commencing and then handing over to Youssef. So we're going to be talking both about historic archaeology, also protohistoric and prehistoric archaeology. Lots one could potentially cover in any presentation on a project, and so this is an overview to give you a sense of, you know, where we are with the project at present, where this is going. So this project has been operating since 2018, and it is currently, you know, we're in the middle of the research. So just trying to give you a sense of where we are at the minute and where this is going. Okay, so just to give you an introduction. So the name of the project, so the Djbel Bani Archaeology Project. So the Djbel Bani is in southern Morocco. On the edge of the pre-Sahara, so the edge of the Sahara. So in the map on the left, you can see, well, hopefully you can see the Djbel Bani mountain range, which is in the south there, just to the south of the Anti-Atlas. And the area particularly that we are working in is the Tata and Akka region. So give you a sense of the landscape. So the Djbel Bani, the mountain range. So there's a shot of the mountain range there, and this in the wider regional context is also the Dra Valley, the fertile valley, which runs to the south of the Djbel Bani. So just to give you a sense of the kind of the geography of where we're talking. In terms of the archaeological heritage of this region, just a few kind of shots here to give you a sense of that. So as I said at the beginning, there's, you know, naturally, as with any, you know, with most areas, one finds a range of archaeology. So there's some really interesting and, you know, exciting archaeology in this area, historic and prehistoric, and much of this protohistoric, as I said, much of this archaeology has seen quite limited research. As one of the reasons why, you know, we were interested in working in this area. And so within the project. So this is the project is obviously it's archaeological research, but it's also fundamentally framed around cultural heritage and trying to consider what an archaeology project can productively do, what can it productively engage in more widely in terms of socially. So in terms of the project, so the focus is the Tata-Akka region, just to give you a very broad overview. So the Tata-Akka region, so the Tata regional, regional town, Akka, the smaller town where we are, most of the work we're undertaking. So that's where we are based for a lot of the time. So as I said, this is a research and cultural heritage program. So within this presentation, we will be talking about the research, academic research we're undertaking, but also the cultural heritage programs that we are, as a project, seeking to develop, but also to engage with cultural heritage and current activities that are already taking place in the area. So this is both historic and prehistoric archaeology. In terms of the collaborations involved, INSAP, l'Institut National des Sciences d'Archéologie et du Patrimoine, Morocco, University of East Anglia and British Museum. So it's obviously myself based at the British Museum. I'm also a research associate at the University of East Anglia. Other key collaborations are with the Cyprus Institute, particularly around archaeological science, the Centre Jacques Burck, around related to both some of the cultural heritage work and the wider regional research, and a wide range of team members from Morocco, from INSAP, various students, other colleagues, team members from Akka and from the nearby town of Tizimin, UK team members, colleagues, team members from Spain, France and Cyprus as well. It's not, as I said at the beginning, we are representing a wider team. So clearly there are a huge range of people contributing to this project. The timescale, so the field work has taken place since 2018 to the present. And so yes, this is an active project into the coming period. In terms of the funding, so the initial funding for this project was from the Society for Libyan Studies, so just to extra emphasize that. So obviously hugely grateful to the Society for having helped initiate this project. Also the Max van Berkem Foundation, Fondation Max van Berkem, British Institute East Africa, the Cyprus Institute and the Centre Jacques Burck. The project receives great support from the Ministry of Culture and from the Tata Regional Governor's Office and from the Commune of Akka and Tizimin. And we'll talk in more detail later on about the activities that we're working on together with these communes. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the site of, well, not the site, but the question of Tamdult. And so we're engaged in a wide range of research around the historic archaeology of the region. Primarily, this is framed in reference to Tamdult, which I'll explain now. So just going to talk about, yes, so this a town which is named in historic sources, or a site which is named in historic sources back to the 9th century. So it's going to talk about the historical background of this and survey and excavations in relation to Tamdult. So the question of Tamdult, so yes, as I said, so Tamdult is referred to in early Arabic sources from the 9th century. And there's this key reference in the early 9th century from the work of Al-Yaqubi, who talks about Tamdult as, I'll quote, of the dependencies of Sijil Massa are villages known as Banu Dar. Among them is a town not big named Tamdult. It belongs to Yahya Idris al-Alawi. It's dominated by a fort. Abd Allah bin Idris came from there. Around it, there are deposits of gold and silver. The gold is fan-like plants, and it's said the wind blows it away. Most of them are a Berber people called Banu Tarja. So this is the first key reference to Tamdult. It's also referred to later in the Almoravid period in the 11th century as a stop on trans-Saharan routes and wider regional trade routes. And on the map on the left shows the position of Tamdult in relation to these regional trade routes. So from this early reference and from an understanding of the regional geology, in particular, silver mines are important in relation to Tamdult. So it's clearly, including from the references here, it clearly has a huge importance in relation to the early silver mining within the region. I'm just going to talk a little bit, so I'm just going to explain what Tamdult is, or is seen to be. So the fortified ruins known as Tamdult, you can see on the screen here, and you can just about make out a couple of cars there on the right to give you a sense of the scale. So these fortified ruins are those associated with Tamdult. So they are 15 kilometers to the south of the town of Akka. And these are the ruins which are represented on maps as those of Tamdult. There's been a range of prior research which has been conducted here, but also that research raised questions, regarding what Tamdult is. There's the descriptions within historical sources in terms of trying to localize it as a place and what it is, brings this into question. So there's very much from the beginning a question around what is Tamdult, hence I'm putting it in inverted commas there. So this is a really important site, clearly, within the landscape and a focus of our research, but trying to understand what its exact relationship is with the historical Tamdult described in the Arabic sources, is part of the project's work. So I've referred to previous research of Tamdult, in those commas. So from the 1970s, Rosenberger conducted a range of research regionally and in relation to the historical sources, localizing it in relation to silver mines in the region. So there's some very important silver mines to the south, particularly in the Djebel Adana, some 10 to 20 kilometers away. And these silver mines have been mined right through to very recent times. Patrice Cressier and his colleagues in the 1990s undertook fieldwork at Tamdult, including excavations, which evidence, important evidence, mainly focused on the main mound or tell at Tamdult, and give a sense of the stratigraphy of the site. And part of that research seemed to demonstrate that there was not early evidence going back to the 9th century linked to the historical sources. This research was not saying that was a definitive conclusion, but it did not evidence that early period. Historical research, historical documentary research has taken place. Handen's book, Tamdult. And then 2012, there was a prospection which took place led by INSAP, UCL, and University of East Anglia, which included my colleague Youssef and myself as well as Kevin McDonald from UCL. And so these series of past researches clearly indicated the great potential of the site for further research, and to really help get at what is Tamdult and what is that kind of wider regional archaeology around it. So Tamdult is surrounded by important fortifications. It has quite a significant stratigraphy, and also, as I'll show in the wider landscape around, there are very important remains. I put on this screen as well the tower at Akka, so as I said, 15 kilometers away in the town, and that's where we're based, fieldwork team. there's a question mark regarding the possibility for Tamdult even being associated with Akka. And we as I'll show later, we've undertaken research there as well, or in the process of. So Tamdult is part of the question of this is part of a wider landscape question, not just this one localized site, it would seem. Yeah, so in terms of, and sorry, just to go back, so in terms of, yeah, part of, our research seeking to undertake and understand the archaeology in this region, Tamdult is a key focal point of the research as we try to understand the medieval period cultural history and post-medieval period, its relationship with Akka, and its wider relationships with silver mining industries, with trans-Saharan networks, and trying to fit this region and better understand this region within wider cultural patterns and histories in this region. So this a mapping of the surrounding of Tamdult shows significant remains within the area. This map was actually produced back in 2012 during our early survey, together with our colleague Kevin McDonald. You can see on this in the bottom left, Tamdult, we can just about make out the darker area, which is the mound, and you can see the red lines on that indicating the fortified areas around that. This image here represents about a 12 kilometer by 8 kilometer area. You can hopefully just about make out across this image a range of red lines, and these relate to structural remains throughout the valley around Tamdult. So these are fortifications which are found over this approximately a 10 kilometer area between Tamdult and Akka. And the wider region that these are situated within features fossil irrigation systems and so important evidence of past agriculture. So effectively what this seems to represent is the wider remains of an oasis settlement. And in terms of trying to understand the end of occupation at Tamdult from historical records, it would appear that this is most likely periodically between the 14th and the 16th century, potentially with some form of abandonment in the 14th century, and then a potential reoccupation, including in the Sardian period, where the fortifications at the mound of Tamdult seem to largely relate to. And then after that, this wider oases landscape would appear to be significantly relating to that 16th century abandonment. That's a working hypothesis. That's obviously part of the research. So part of the research is trying to understand this wider landscape. Here's an example of one of these structural, a corner of one of these fortified buildings. You can make out the mud brick just about within the walls of that. We've undertaken some early test excavations on some of these structures. So the chronology of these at present is not clearly understood. And some of these structures have very, very, very shallow stratigraphy with the erosion through the valley. So this is a critical thing for the coming period to undertake further research on these structures and to understand their chronological relationship to Tamdult, of course. So just to highlight this wider landscape. So we're mapping this landscape, undertaking test excavations, and across the valley, and to basically understand the cultural sequence of this area, to be able to align it and to bring it together with these documentary historical sources. A key further thing to point out in this landscape is the metalworking sites in the surrounding landscape. So very significant remains of metalworking. so slag mounds, slag fields. So right around Tamdult, multiple kilometers, you have a wide range of these slag fields. And so these, so we're undertaking research, sampling these, and in the process of strategizing for test excavations to understand that, that wider landscape of metallurgy. So this entirely aligns with the understanding of Tamdult as a significant metalworking center, and the and I'll come briefly as well a bit to the mining survey. Yes, indeed, right away, briefly. So alongside this, we are undertaking research of the regional mining landscape. And this is being undertaken by our colleagues Thilo Reren and Antoine Corsier. So this is both in the the known historic silver mining areas in the Djebel Adana to the south, and more widely around the region to fully understand the mines. There are both silver mines and copper mines, and this aligns with the metallurgy which is seen at the site. Also, ironworking is seen at the site as well, just to point that out. So here is evidence on the right, shown here, of the geology which this relates to. So galena mining related to silver, and malachite. So these are just some examples of this mining geology. So alongside this wider regional survey, we've been undertaking excavations, and just to give you a broad sense of these. So we've been undertaking test excavations to better understand the stratigraphy at the site, and to look at examples, types of buildings, types of zones relating to metalworking. So trying to sample across the site, as well as in the top center you can see the mosque as well, which I'll come to. So we're at the point of having undertaken a range of test excavations, but there is still significant work to do, but we have come to a good, we've done some kind of good sampling across the site, as I'll explain now. So I want to kind of highlight three areas. Firstly, on top of the main mound of Tamdult, on the top of the hilltop area, survey across this area reveals significant evidence of metalworking, slag remains. So we undertook test excavations at multiple points on this hilltop, and amongst the areas which we've evidenced in the center, the top center here, so the three images on the left all relate to this. This is an area of furnaces, so within relation to a structure. So clear evidence of high level metalworking taking place on the hilltop at the site, and this entirely correlates with the significant evidence of metallurgy. So we have found in situ evidence of these furnaces, and we're in the process of seeking to understand what is the exact nature of that metallurgy. Also, domestic structures associated on the right. You can see this interior of a room with this mud brick floor, and that's a feature within this area. So the stratigraphy in this area is approximately just under 2 meters deep. Oops, sorry, 2 meters deep, with about 3 different phases. And this broadly aligns our working hypothesis of this is with the chronology which Patrice Cressier, the sequence which Patrice Cressier identified within his test excavations as well. We have at the present no definitive evidence for this ninth 10th century period. But at the same time, we're still in the process of actually getting the radiocarbon dates. So, but that's our working hypothesis at the moment, that alignment with Patrice Cresset's evidence. Another key area we investigated was the mosque, again, which had been seen limited test excavations and evidencing of this by Patrice Cresset. So we've undertaken more expansive investigations of the mosque and the stratigraphy alongside. And this, so this, as you can see in the center here, this portion where we've excavated showing the various pillars of the mosque and the floor surface. And on the right, you can see some examples of decorated plasterwork which relate to the structure. There's a very shallow stratigraphy in association with this mosque, and that relates to the fact that basically the mound of Tamdult is an Inselberg, so it's a natural hill. So the stratigraphy is quite variable across the site. So there is not a deep sequence here, but this is a very important structure though, and we're undertaking research on this. Another important area of excavations is what we've been kind of loosely terming the kind of lower town. So to the base of the hill, there's significant evidence for structural remains, and also it would be a metallurgy, as we have evidence within these excavations. So the excavations which were undertaken over the past couple of years at this site have evidenced a range of furnace structures, and so the working basis is that these relate to silver metallurgy. So we're finding really good evidence across the site to enable us to really better understand not just the kind of urban structure of the town, but its silver processing and its metalworking industries. In terms of, so just to kind of recap, obviously, as I said, these excavations have not been completed. This is the wider test phase across the site. So in the coming period, we need to be targeting different areas of the site for more intensive excavation according to the questions that we're trying to answer. In terms of the chronology, we found a range of coins, Almoravid and Almohad coins, so 11th to 13th century, and glazed ceramics, which again, these seem to be confirming this the chronology of the site, this kind of 11th to 14th century kind of period, which again broadly aligns with Patrice Cresset's earlier work. So nothing we found as yet would indicate an earlier period. Again, it's not definitive, and we have only undertaken relatively limited test excavations. So as I say, the radiocarbon samples we've taken were planned to be processed over the past year, and over the past year, it's one of the things which has fallen by the wayside in the current context. But we're just getting these together now to get these processed to provide absolute chronology for the site. In terms of the metalworking industries, some key things to highlight, some of the evidence. There's, as I said, a range of slag across the site, indicating important silver and copper industries, as I also said, in terms of also some evidence of iron. A couple of things to highlight particularly. So at the bottom here, you see some on the bottom left, these very large crucible fragments relating to copper metallurgy. And so these are just the bases of these vessels. So very significant copper processing. And at the top, we see some ingot mold fragments. So these would be for, so these are not complete, obviously, to give us a sense of what these ingots would have looked like, but they're trapezoidal or V-shaped, V-sectioned ingots. So lengthy, long ingots of some length. So really quite important evidence we found here regarding the primary phase of processing, their conversion right through to these kind of semi-finished, finished products. So giving a really good sense of that metalworking system. Another really key thing to point out, firstly identified back in 2000, back in 2012 actually, we found one example of a ceramic mold for producing coin blanks. So these would have been either circular or rectangular, rectilinear molds. The holes you can see in them would be where you'd put dust or small fragments of metal to heat them up to produce a coin blank. These are obviously circular, so to produce small coin blanks of metal, which would then be stamped to convert into a finished coinage. During Thilo Reren's first visit to the site, he began to identify quite quickly with his very good eyes for these things, multiple fragments of these, and soon we began to see them in significant quantities across the site. So there's a clear evidence for this production of, at least first phase production of a coinage. It's unclear whether these would have been stamped at the site. We haven't found a coin die. So, but again, this is giving us a very clear sense of another very important aspect to the economy at the site. They could relate to some of the coins, some of the circular coins we found. Obviously, we found Almoravid coins. We don't have definite confirmation of that yet, but they're clearly not for the square-shaped. We are working on that basis. Also glass weight fragments as well. So really giving a good sense of the kind of monetary systems at the site, a wide range of other material culture, silver jewelry, significant fragments across the site, significant evidence across the site, including complete objects, earrings, various other bits of jewelry. Beads, for example, are another form of material culture found across the site. So we're starting to develop a good sense of the material culture of this place. So giving you a sense of what kind of research we've been undertaking, we do not have definitive definitive answers regarding this place. Again, that's why Tamdult is in inverted commas. What relationship did it have to this thing known as Tamdult, this place known as Tamdult within these early historic records? Was it a designated mining center? Was it part of a wider agricultural oasis? Obviously, clearly it had a metallurgy function, but this wider kind of fossil agriculture or agricultural landscape it sits within. The caravan post, obviously you have the trans-Saharan networks as well. So beginning to understand how it fits into this landscape. And but also we've undertaken investigations within Akka at the place known as Agadir Amgar, which has seen significant excavations previously, largely linked to kind of cultural heritage preservation work by some previous teams. So we undertook some complementary test excavations there in the context of the project to seek to fit this into, seek to better understand the stratigraphy at that site. As part of a wider effort we are going to be undertaking to understand the wider area around Akka. There's a range of forts around, historic, abandoned forts, but also various other site remains around Akka. So alongside the work we're taking place at the mound and in that valley in between, also in Akka itself. So these test excavations, which were undertaken by our colleague Jorge Onrubia, and some really good work to give us a sense of the stratigraphy at this site. So just to, this is fairly provisional work within ACCA, but just to give you a sense of that we are undertaking as part of that wider landscape. The further thing I want to flag up is the talked about trans-Saharan routes, so south of Tamdult, and these are indicated based upon al-Bakri, the Arabic geographer al-Bakri in the 11th century. So the caravan routes down to Mauritania and the town of Oudegoust in Mauritania. Obviously, we are not undertaking research across that kind of landscape, but there's a number of places to the south of Tamdult which can be seen to potentially relate to that route. So we've been undertaking survey of certain sites to the south of Tamdult which might relate to this. Some of Youssef's colleagues and who in ACCA and Tata have quite a good understanding of these sites historically. So they've been supporting the research to help identify these and to link in with the research that we're going to be doing. And so we undertook a brief survey of these sites and took some limited samples, including radiocarbon samples, to start to get a sense of these sites. So this is one of them, Bokbot, so a fortified site. It's clearly kind of in a good position in relation to these wider trade routes and movement throughout the landscape. So this is the first place we visited. We did some limited surface collection and sampling and took some radiocarbon samples. And another site is Kasasher, which overlooks the Dra Valley and is a very significant fortified site, broadly kind of square shaped with towers and various fortified features around it. It has a cemetery associated as well. Again, we took some limited surface collection and radiocarbon samples taken. And then the third place, Tin Kilal, and at this site, the same kind of sampling. And we actually found at this site this evidence of on the bottom shown in the image here, a litharge cake, which is a very, very clear indicator of a specific type of silver metallurgy. So this is actually another silver processing point within the landscape. So we undertook an initial survey, but this is going to be part of the ongoing research. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Youssef now. Thank you very much.
Merci, cher ami Sam. Comme vous avez pu le constater, donc la zone de Tamdult et la zone d'Arqa était vraiment un carrefour du sud du Maroc, un carrefour, donc une position très très importante. Donc c'est ce carrefour et cette position très importante à l'époque médiévale. Donc la région l'a hérité en fait des époques préhistoriques et protohistoriques. Comme on va le voir tout à l'heure, donc à partir déjà de l'Holocène et donc à partir du Néolithique, la région de Tata-Arqa va devenir vraiment disposer de plusieurs occupations préhistoriques. Tu peux lancer la slide. The next slide, please, Sam. Sam, oui. Donc là, vous pouvez le constater justement. Donc l'importance stratégique de la zone où on est, vous voyez, donc on est dans la zone d'Arqa, qui est située entre deux chaînes montagneuses. Au nord, donc c'est le Djbel Bani, qui est vraiment disons, une barrière topographique, comme on le connaît. D'ailleurs, le terme de Arqa que vous voyez ici, donc c'est un terme berbère qui veut dire cluse. C'est un passage percé par les oueds au fil de millions d'années et qui permet le passage donc entre le nord et le sud. Au sud de la zone, c'est le Djbel Warklis, qui est aussi une autre barrière topographique. Et entre les deux, on dispose d'un couloir topographique qui relie, disons, le nord-est vers le sud-est à travers donc, le Wadra, qui est vraiment un couloir topographique, mais c'est aussi la présence des sources d'eau et des terrasses fluviales qui étaient propices justement à l'occupation pendant le Next slide, please, Sam. Sam, next slide, please. Next slide, please, Sam.
Yeah, I just did, it should be.
J'ai pas le... Ah oui, ok, je peux le faire, ok. Et là, comme vous pouvez le voir, donc cette slide, donc la région de Tata et d'Arqa, il est considéré ici au Maroc comme le plus grand musée d'art rupestre. Vous voyez, il y a au moins une centaine de sites d'art rupestre, ici représentés uniquement les grands sites, les sites majeurs, et comme vous pouvez le constater, sont autour un petit peu donc les pieds des montagnes dans des zones clés. Et donc ces sites rupestres, ils sont en majorité déjà inventoriés, déjà à partir donc, des années 50-60 du siècle dernier. Dans notre programme, donc nous, on ne s'intéresse pas prioritairement aux gravures rupestres, mais ce qui nous intéresse, c'est en fait d'identifier, de localiser les sites d'occupation, parce que donc, ces populations préhistoriques, ils ont habité ici, et ils n'ont pas uniquement gravé, mais ils ont habité ici, et donc il fallait un petit peu chercher, prospecter donc les paléosols de ces populations, et donc on a réussi à localiser pas mal de paléosols. Le problème qui se pose dans les régions pré-sahariennes et sahariennes, c'est qu'il y a absence de sédimentation, parce qu'il n'y a pas de couvert végétal, et donc du coup, le sédiment, il est balayé par le vent ou carrément par des pluies torrentielles, et du coup, il y a un mélange justement d'artefacts sur le même endroit où on peut trouver, disons, un biface sacholien avec la céramique néolithique ou même avec des monnaies almoravides. C'est ça le problème justement qui se pose dans les zones pré-sahariennes. Next slide. I don't have it. Sam?
Yep.
Je n'arrive pas à passer next slide.
Yeah, I've done it. It's coming.
Voilà. Donc là, vous voyez quelques échantillons justement de l'occupation paléolithique. Donc, contrairement quand même à la région de Middle Dara, donc le projet que je co-dirige avec mon collègue David Mattingly, donc la préhistoire reculée et n'est pas du tout bien représentée dans la zone de Arqa, contrairement à la région de Zagora, d'Agdez et de Tinzulin. Donc, next slide, please. Voilà. Donc, on passe, disons, aux occupations néolithiques. C'est tout à fait normal. Comme je vous ai parlé justement de l'abondance des sites d'art rupestre, eh bien, normalement, à côté des sites rupestres, si on prend la peine de chercher, on va trouver des occupations qui remontent à cette période. Et là, vous voyez une multitude de fragments de céramique décorés. Et la majorité, justement, du type de décor, c'est un décor impressionné, c'est impression en peigne, à dents fines. Et donc, cette typologie, justement, de décoration et de décoration nous renvoie vers les influences donc sahariennes. Et donc, en fait, on est dans la limite nord des remontées d'influence saharienne. Next slide, please. Voilà, vous voyez donc il y a un paléosol à votre gauche, donc tel qu'on l'a trouvé. Et donc, après le fouille, malheureusement, comme je vous ai dit, absence de sédimentation, donc les paléosols sont balayés par le vent et les pluies torrentielles. Et donc, il y a très peu d'éléments archéologiques qu'on a trouvés ici. Next slide, please. Voilà, donc là, on revient au site d'art rupestre. Donc, la région est riche en sites d'art rupestre. Donc, il y a des sites majeurs ici, comme vous voyez, donc très connus dans la littérature. Je prends des exemples, le site d'Imaoun, voilà, très connu, Adram Tgourin, Timgrad et Serdan, Ouad Mishkaou, Mlalek, tout ça, c'est des sites déjà connus dans la littérature, Tamzrat, Tadlakous. Donc, la littérature abonde justement d'articles et de présentations, donc c'est patrimoine rupestre. Donc nous, on les a juste visités dans l'intention de chercher donc, où habiter les gens préhistoriques. Next slide, please. Voilà, donc, si tu veux, c'est un petit peu défiler rapidement sur la rupestre, parce que vraiment, ce n'est pas un axe majeur pour nous, mais quand même on voit donc les différences. Ici, dans la station de Mlalek, Donc, vous allez voir, donc, il y a uniquement la faune sauvage qui est représentée avec le style tazina, donc qui est un style artistique où donc, les caractéristiques des animaux sont exagérées pour prononcer un petit peu. Donc, c'est un style d'art qui remonte au passage en fait, entre le paléolithique supérieur et le néolithique. Donc, on est encore dans des populations de chasseurs-cueilleurs et donc les populations bovidiennes où les éleveurs donc, justement de troupeaux de bétail, essentiellement des bœufs, vont apparaître après, donc, au début du néolithique. Next slide, please. Next slide. Diapositive, s'il vous plaît. Alors, Sam. Diapo, s'il vous plaît. Sam Nixon.
Oui.
Voilà. Voilà. Tu peux défiler sur les diapositives d'Archipêtre, donc vite fait, donc c'est pas la peine de s'attarder. Voilà. Et donc, en fait, le volet qui nous intéresse ici dans ce programme, c'est essentiellement donc, la période protohistorique et la période préhispanique. Et bien sûr, la zone est très riche en patrimoine funéraire. Là, vous voyez autour de la ville d'Aqqa, vous voyez que c'est carrément un petit peu entre le Djbel Bani et le Djbel Bani. Donc, au milieu, on a deux grandes nécropoles, la nécropole de l'Oued Tata et la nécropole de l'Oued Gourgine. Donc, tous les deux, l'Oued Tata et l'Oued Gourgine, c'est des affluents de l'Oued Dra. Next slide, please, Sam. Diapositive, Sam, prochaine diapositive.
Yeah, it's a bit slow. So.
Voilà, donc là, c'est une nécropole qu'on a découvert en 2018. Et donc, cette nécropole est située complètement dans une zone interdite, une zone militaire. On est proche de la frontière. À l'arrière-plan, les collines que vous voyez à l'arrière-plan, à l'horizon, on est déjà sur la frontière. On a une vingtaine de kilomètres. Donc, c'est une zone militaire. Donc, il faut être muni d'autorisation des autorités civiles et militaires. Et donc, quand on veut travailler aussi avec le drone dans ces zones, c'est très sensible. Donc, il faut faire des démarches qui prennent parfois un mois, des fois un mois et demi. Donc, il faut s'y préparer à l'avance. Mais ce n'est pas interdit. Donc, nous, on a accès à la zone militaire et on a utilisé vraiment le drone sans aucun problème. Donc, il suffit d'être muni des permis des autorités et on est tranquille, on ne vient pas nous embêter, on travaille tranquillement. Et là, vous voyez donc, sur la diapositive d'en haut, à bord, vous voyez donc, des formes typiquement sahariennes, c'est ce qu'on appelle des monuments en antenne. Et donc, celui que vous voyez au centre, c'est carrément un monument qui fait à peu près 500 mètres de long. Donc, c'est carrément des petits types sahariennes, mais avec une particularité de la région de Tata. Donc, c'est l'espèce de monument en forme de gourde, typiquement original de la zone d'Aqqa. Par contre, les deux formes que vous voyez en bas, la forme en delta, plane, ou la forme de trou de serrure, c'est des types communs de la région saharienne. Next slide, please, Sam. Diapo. Next slide, please, Sam.
It's coming.
Voilà. Donc, la région de la nécropole de Ouaddata, il n'est pas situé sur la zone militaire, mais il n'est pas loin. Donc, il est carrément, disons, axé au bord de la route. Vous voyez la route qui est la route en jaune, la ligne jaune continue, c'est la route qui relie la ville de Tata à la ville d'Aqqa. Et donc, à la gauche, vous voyez la nécropole. Donc, la nécropole est située sur des collines tabulaires, ce qu'on appelle dans la région du sud les garas. Donc, c'est des collines qui sont, disons, taillées par l'érosion et qui présentent certains falaises qui dominent justement l'oued, tel que vous voyez ici. Vous voyez ici toutes les garas qui dominent l'oued Tata et ils sont occupés par la nécropole protohistorique de l'oued Tata. Next slide, please, Sam. Diapo, voilà. Vous avez une image du drone qu'on a faite en 2019. Et là, vous voyez donc les formes donc, sur la gara, sur la colline tabulaire. Et là, vous voyez donc typiquement les formes sahariennes, les formes en forme de gourde, les deltas, mais aussi les ailes de mouche. Et donc, malheureusement, tel que nous avons déjà constaté sur la région du Middle. Donc, ces types de monuments ont subi des dégradations vraiment majeures de la part des chercheurs de trésors. Donc, on peut estimer le degré de violation de ces tombes à plus de 95% donc de violation. Donc, il y a très peu de monuments qui restent intacts. Mais dans tous les cas, sur la nécropole que je vous ai montré tout à l'heure, qui est située sur la zone militaire, oui, il est intact parce que comme il y a accès interdit aux populations, ça a préservé la majorité des tombes. Next slide, please, Sam. Voilà, vous voyez donc une île sur la nécropole de Ouattata, qui n'est pas dans la zone militaire. Donc, en 2020, on a fait des fouilles donc, sur 3 tumulus, très importants. Mais malheureusement, il s'est avéré après que la tombe, justement, qui ont renfermé le squelette et le mobilier funéraire, a été complètement violée. Et donc, on était là uniquement pour constater donc, les dégâts. Donc, on n'a rien trouvé, ni matériel osseux, ni mobilier funéraire, à part un de ces tumulus, le dernier qu'on va voir tout à l'heure. Next slide, please. Ça. Voilà. Sur ce monument, donc c'est une prise de photo qui est faite par le drone. Donc, vous voyez ici la taille du monument, c'est colossal. Là, c'est l'échelle, donc les 4 individus, c'est nous. Et donc, ça, c'est le monument qui doit faire au moins 120 mètres de long. Et donc, vous voyez ici les deux branches du monument, ce qu'on appelle les ailes. En fait, dans la typologie française, on appelle ce monument tumulus à antenne en forme d'aile de mouche. Alors, je ne sais pas comment, c'est wing fly, c'est ça, en anglais?
It says the wing of a fly. Yeah.
C'est ça, wing of a fly, c'est ça. Voilà. Et donc, sur celui-là, donc, vous voyez carrément les traces de la pelle mécanique donc, qui a pris donc, les galets pour les utiliser dans le beaux travaux urbains. Donc, sur l'emplacement de la tombe, on a réussi quand même à trouver plus de 260 rondelles d'empilage of absolute egg. Donc, voilà. Donc, et donc, j'imagine qu'à travers donc, justement, ces coquilles d'autruche travaillées donc en parure, donc on va sacrifier quelques-uns pour faire une datation, pour avoir une idée sur la chronologie de ce type de monument. Donc, contrairement aux monuments comme du Middle qui sont, disons, cernés chronologiquement à travers le programme de datation qu'on avait réalisé, donc qui sont plutôt situés entre le 9e siècle avant et le 4e siècle après. Donc, on a l'impression que ce type de monuments typiquement sahariens, des monuments antennes, pourraient être beaucoup plus anciens que les monuments du Kota. Voilà, next slide, please. Next slide, please, Sam. Non, c'est pas celle-là. The next. Sam, tu peux passer la next?
Yeah.
Donc, en parallèle justement aux monuments funéraires, donc, qui sont très abondants, on est à la recherche justement des habitats contemporains, donc comme néolithique. Donc, ça, c'est une des lacunes justement graves dans l'archéologie marocaine. Donc, la période protohistorique, elle est essentiellement connue par les monuments funéraires, les nécropoles sont abondantes, mais rares les habitats contemporains ont été identifiés. Donc, en parallèle à ce que je fais avec David sur le cours du drap, là, on a carrément identifié pas mal de forteresses contemporaines des tumulus, ce qui est le cas aussi dans de Djbel Bani avec Sam Nixon. Donc là, on vient d'identifier un type d'habitat qui pourrait être protohistorique, qui pourrait être contemporain des tombes. Et là, donc, on attend les résultats du carbone 14 pour justement confirmer ça. Mais disons, la typologie de la fortification ressemble nettement à ce qu'on a déjà identifié dans le Middle et qui est déjà bien daté donc, au premier millénaire avant Jésus-Christ. Next slide, please. Je pense avoir terminé avec le volet protohistorique et je pense que je vais céder la main à Sam. Next slide, please, Sam.
Khorasan, are you going to?
Voilà.
So Youssef has asked me to sort of make 3 particular points in English for you all, for those of you who don't understand French, which of course do not do justice to the richness of what he's just shown us. But the first really key point that we need to recognize is that this region of the Djbel Bani and the region of Akka is, as it is in the medieval period, so too in prehistory and the protohistoric period, is a really important crossroads for people and for communication. And it's this importance as a corridor of movement that explains the richness of the archaeological remains, particularly rock art settlement and tombs. And the second point he wants to make is that this region is very, very rich in rock art. And he showed you some beautiful examples, and it's these that have been the preoccupation of most scholars until recently. But this project is not so interested in the rock art, but rather the evidence for occupation, for life in prehistory and the protohistoric period. And so this means not looking simply or only at the rock art, but also at paleo soils, at ceramics, at lithics, stone tools, settlement, and tombs. And it is these which really allow us to understand culture and society in prehistory and the protohistoric period, and to give some light in particular into Saharan culture in this period. And the third point that Youssef wanted me to make is, and I think this is what comes out so clearly from this work, is about the funerary landscape, particularly in the proto-historic and pre-Islamic periods. As he showed you, this is a very rich funerary landscape with very complex sort of typology of tombs. We've seen the antenna tombs, we've seen these keyhole tombs, and this very strange tomb which looks like the wing of a fly. And Youssef has shown very clearly that this is a very different sort of the type of tomb types to what you see elsewhere in the Sahara, particularly say the Middle Dra. And these monuments that we see here in the Djbel Bani are very, very typically Saharan. They tend to be found in these gara, these little plateaus or hills above the watercourses, or in other important places marking these elements. And what is also important is that these tombs seem to go alongside contemporary settlement. And he showed us this wonderful, really fascinating proto-historic hilltop settlement. And this is really, really key, because in Moroccan archaeology, Youssef told us that the history of the proto-historic period, the first millennium BC AD, has been written largely through the history of tombs. But in the Djbel Bani, what we see are contemporary settlements, and this offers a huge potential to understand those bigger questions about culture and life. And this is precisely what we also see in the Middle Dra, where Youssef is working with David Mattingly, Martin Sterry, and myself and others, where we've got very similar types of settlement that have been dated by radiocarbon to the first half of the first millennium CE. So these similarities show very clearly that the proto-historic period in southern Morocco is also a period with a lot of settlement, and I think we're all very excited to see what's going to come out of your work in Djbel Bani. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Khorasan. So I'm just going to a few minutes to cover some of the, obviously the really critical elements of, some of the really critical elements of the work in terms of how the project, or what is already happening in relation to cultural heritage activities in the area, and how the project is beginning to engage with those. So just at the end to give you a sense of this before we kind of move to some questions. So in terms of this, just to give you a sense of some of the wider kind of social landscape of some of the sites we're looking at. On the left here is Tamdult, and so during our research, This is a visit by some school children. So Tamdult is somewhere, or it's obviously 15 kilometers from Akka. It's a number of kilometers from the nearby town of Tizanin. It's a place where people come to regularly, school children come to regularly on visits, whether organized visits or by themselves, a place to come and to relax and to talk. So it is a significant place in the landscape. Obviously in terms of education, in terms of the history teaching which takes place, it is a key place to come to engage with the archaeological heritage in the area. So this was a visit which took place while we were there, and we had a number of visits ourselves as a team to the school children in the town of Akka. They hosted us, and so this is an ongoing kind of relationship. And there's a lot for the project to learn and engage with. On the right, this is a small museum which is run by somebody in Tizanin, and so this museum is gathering together a range of historic materials which relate to Tamdult and some of the other sites in the area. So, and presenting these within Tizanin as a visitor, for visitors, people who are interested, so within Tizanin to engage with the surrounding heritage. So we've had a number of visits, and seeking how we as a project can relate to this really interesting and important initiative. In terms of advocacy for the project, the regional governor of Tata has been very interested in the project and has himself been promoting the project and is very keen to support the project into the future. And so we've had a number of visits organized to the site, to Akka, so touring around the different sites that we are working on. So on the left, you could see this is the governor's team's visit to the excavations at the mosque. On the right, Antoine Corsier explaining to the governor regarding the furnace structures he's in the process of excavating. So we've worked very hard to respond to the governor's interest and to see how the project can best align with the priorities around cultural heritage in the region. And so we're looking forward to ongoing discussions as to how that can best develop. And we're very appreciative as a project of how supportive the governor is being, and obviously it's clearly he's seeking to align what we're doing with his priorities within the region, and that clearly is an importance to perceived importance to what we're doing. So that's really great that these things come together. This is another visit together with Youssef to some of the prehistoric sites. In terms of we've held a conference in Akka in 2020, which was really well attended, with people coming from quite significant distances, including from Agadir, which is a significant distance from Akka. And just to an opportunity to present the research and to take that kind of engagement to the next level. It's like how to share the results and how best can this project respond. We did a tour of various places in Akka. We went to some of the local offices where cultural heritage is represented. So that was a really great opportunity. And then we also we had a really good community workshop which says workshop in Tizanin, the town which is nearest to the site and where most members of the local community work on the project live. And historically, that has been a silver working industries are very significant in that town. Here's some of the images from that event. So top right, so the some of the collections which are held in the local museum that I showed you before were presented at this event. There was a range of performances which took place, and we gave a presentation, and there was a very, very long series of discussions afterwards, which was really great. You had such questions, for example, as a very young boy, asked for the microphone, and he said, "Why did people move away from the town of Tamdult?" Which is obviously a good question and not that easy to answer. So there was some it was a really good event, and so we're going to be kind of seeking to extend these discussions, and just trying to align the work of the project with everything else which is happening within the region and locally to the site. And lastly, and this is Youssef's work, which is parallel to the project. It is not explicitly part of the project, and so this relates to Youssef. Do you want to actually just briefly talk about this, just to represent this?
Yeah, of course. Donc, disons, vu l'intérêt justement donc, des recherches archéologiques effectuées dans les zones pré-sahariennes du Maroc, notamment les deux projets que je co-dirige, celui-là justement Djbel Bani avec Sam, et le deuxième avec sur le Middle, oui, avec David Mattingly, mais avec d'autres projets aussi. Le troisième projet, c'est celui que je dirige avec Jorge Loubia de l'Université Castilla-Mancha sur le Wad Noun et le site médiéval de Tamdult. Le site Guélise sur lequel travaille Abdallah Fili, qui est un grand ami à nous, avec Vince Tevel, donc c'est l'Université de Paris. Et le cinquième projet, c'est celui sur Sidi Massa, le grand carrefour justement caravanier. Et donc, c'est comme on vous a dit, qu'on a une collaboration avec le centre Jacques Burck qui a financé partiellement les travaux sur Tamdult. Et donc, actuellement, il y a un grand projet avec le centre Jacques Burck sur la création de 5 musées qui englobent ces 5 programmes. Un musée sur Église avec justement la dynastie Al-Mouhad, la montée de la dynastie Al-Mouhad. Un deuxième sur Nulumta, qui est carrément sur le village Assil, après le Guémil. Le troisième, c'est le musée ou le centre d'interprétation d'Aqqa, qui va être dédié au patrimoine médiéval, mais aussi au patrimoine protohistorique et pré-islamique de la région d'Aqqa. Le troisième, c'est un musée au centre d'interprétation du patrimoine archéologique du Coup du Drap, qui va être implanté dans un joli cadre à Zagoura. Et le cinquième, c'est celui de Sidi Massa. Donc, ces centres ils seront opérationnels d'ici fin avril. Donc, on a déjà tout le matériel, des vitrines, tous les posters et tout ça, donc le travail de visualisation. Et donc, ils vont être ouverts au public. Si ce n'est pas fin avril, ça va être fin mai, parce que fin avril, ça coïncide avec le Ramadan. Et comme vous le savez, donc, durant ce mois sacré, l'activité est au ralenti. Et je pense que l'inauguration de ce centre va être décalée vers la fin mai, Inch'Allah. Voilà. Donc, voilà. Sam, à toi la parole.
Yeah, Khorasan, do you want to just quickly say a couple of sentence summary? That's pretty much the last slide.
Well, okay. They'll be doing huge amounts of work building a new centre of interpretation for heritage here, and that this is not simply related to the work that Sam and Youssef have been doing together, but also to some of the really impressive and important work that other scholars like Abdallah Fali have been doing in the region. But I think probably if people have questions, we can move to the Q&A. Sam, sure. Is this the last slide or?
There we go. There's so just the...
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, just clearly, reiterating the kind of thanks. Obviously, the funders and critically the support, authorizations and support, and right from the Ministry of Culture through to the Regional Governor's Office to the Commune of Accra and Tisneen, and obviously to yeah, everybody involved. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for such a fascinating talk. And we've actually, so the way we do this is people, if you've got a question, put it in the Q&A, and then we'll deal with them as they come in. And there already are lots of questions, so I think we'll just get started with the Q&A in there. Though I will take the liberty as the chair of asking one quick question. Of Sam and Youssef. Those ingot molds you found, do you think that they were for silver or for copper? Because of course copper ingots were traded south in some quantity, and do you have any thoughts on that at this stage, or is it too early to say?
It's a little bit early, but you know, yes, it's a bit early, but the sense is that you know, likely is you know, copper ingots, but you know, at the minute it's the possibilities are kind of multiple on that. So we're right in the stage now of you know, if Tilo Rerum were here, that would be, you know, fantastic to get a comment from him. But in terms of talking here, so I don't want to completely represent his research, but so that research is happening at the Cyprus Institute. Which is really fantastic. So kind of covering the, you know, right from these ingot molds to the coin molds. And just to say the coin molds, they are significantly silver. So, you know, those are silver coin molds. So there's as yet, there's no evidence of specific traces of metallurgy on those. So I wouldn't want to commit on that, but I could say about the coin molds are silver. So yeah. Brilliant.
Well, as you know,
sorry, not the clearest answer on that.
We've got somewhat similar molds at Volubilis, so we're very interested in what you're doing. I'm going to take questions, not necessarily in the order they come in, but sort of what fits with where the discussion is. And so there's a follow-up question from David Mattingly, who thanks you both for such a rich presentation of an amazing project. And first he has a project for you, Sam, which is related to what we're talking about, and then another one for Youssef. So for Sam, given the clear archaeological emphasis on silver and copper, what do you make of Al-Yaqubi's reference to abundant gold in the region?
That's a very good question. As in terms of that is seen to relate to the potential for, well, to relate to the questions around the trans-Saharan gold trade. So the possibility of this as a center for imported gold dust, and the trade of that. However, there is regional evidence, some regional evidence for gold mining as well. So we shouldn't completely rule that out, but this is most likely seen to relate to it being a rich place for trade. So that's the most likely relationship. But again, just to highlight, there is some evidence for gold mining in the region. We've not found any evidence of gold or gold working at the site as yet, but not to rule that out for sure.
Thank you.
Je peux rajouter une chose. Donc la région d'Arcas, c'est une région polymétallographique, et donc la présence de l'or aussi, il est confirmé. Donc disons pas loin de la zone où on travaille, et il y a une grande mine qui exploite l'or. C'est la mine de Zgonder, donc qui donne vraiment pas mal de production. Et donc il y a beaucoup d'intérêt justement des compagnies minières pour justement la recherche de l'or et de l'argent dans la zone.
So this is a very rich, it's a polymetallic region,
Yeah.
and that there is a very, very important mine at Zgonder, which where they found gold, and they're exploiting it now. Also silver at Zgonder as well, huge quantities. It's one of the biggest silver mines in Morocco, and the whole area even now is being exploited intensively for minerals and metals, and clearly it was in the past as well. So Youssef, I have a question also from David on the tombs. Il dit que les tombes protohistoriques sont vraiment intéressants et extraordinaires. Et lui est frappé par des différences majeures avec les tombes du Moyen Drap. Et vous avez déterminé où précisément entre Akka et le cul de drap, la tradition funéraire change ou pas encore? Est-ce qu'il y a...
Oui, il y a vraiment un grand changement de tradition funéraire entre le cul de drap et le Djbel Bani occidental. Donc, disons, dans le cul de drap, les formes les plus communes, c'est les formes coniques avec lucarne qui n'existent pas du tout dans la région du Djbel Bani. Les tombes aussi à chapelle, apparemment, sont très rares, sinon inexistantes dans le Djbel Bani. Donc, ce qui fait, c'est carrément une tradition funéraire complètement différente. Donc, ici, c'est plutôt les monuments à antenne à ras du sol. Il n'y a pas des formes tumulaires comme des mottes, comme les collines. Donc, on a surtout des formes avec un dallage à ras du sol, avec des formes géométriques complètement différentes. Voilà.
So just the key points are that there aren't any, so in the Djbel Bani, there aren't any conical tombs or antenna tombs, or not that many antenna tombs. So there are real differences between the two areas, which is interesting. And this brings us on to another question from Robert from Bob Bewley, and also for you, Youssef. And he apologizes for not asking in French, but I will do my best to translate it. And he is interested in the influences. Donc, où viennent les principales influences sur la typologie funéraire et du latte rupestre? Vous avez décrit un carrefour. Est-ce qu'il y a des influences sahariennes du sud ou les influences du nord, de l'est ou de l'ouest? Est-ce qu'on peut parler des influences ou c'est quelque chose?
Oui, non, bien sûr. Donc, on peut parler d'influences. Disons, pour les monuments funéraires, les formes, disons, qu'on a documentées de la région du Bani, c'est des formes sahariennes, mais pas Sahara centrale, c'est plutôt Sahara atlantique. Disons, les mêmes formes qu'on a, on les a trouvées donc, du côté du Sahara, Sahara atlantique ou Sahara occidental, le terme diffère, donc de chaque point de vue. De point de vue même gravure presque, c'est les formes qu'on trouve dans la région du Bani, ils sont complètement différentes des formes qu'on trouve dans le Middle Dra. Donc, disons, le Djbel Bani, c'est plutôt orienté vers le Sahara, plus que le Middle Dra, qui est un petit peu une zone de fusion entre les formes qui sont venues du nord et les formes qui venues du sud. Voilà. Donc, on a l'impression qu'il s'agit là de populations qui sont venues du Sahara, qui ont exploité cette zone, qui ont ramené avec eux leur funéraire, leur culte et leur art.
So essentially in the Djbel Bani, it's much more Saharan. And so if one were to talk about influences at all coming from the south, that would be in the Djbel Bani. But that is very different to what we see at the other end of the Dra, in the middle Dra and the sort of elbow of the Dra, where it's, you know, a different thing is going on and it's perhaps more connected to what's going on in slightly more northern areas, but very Saharan, quite specific, really interesting regional diversity. And I'll just follow this up with there are some more questions for you, Sam, coming, but this is also related and it's for Youssef, and this is from David Stone, who thanks you very much for the talk, and he wants to ask you about the features that you have found associated with the hill forts and urbanism, whether you find fortifications, planned layout, and so on. I'll put it in French. He's put it in French as well. Est-ce que vous pourrez parler, s'il vous plaît, des caractéristiques associées au début de l'urbanisme ou les sites pêchés? Oui. Trouvez-vous des murs de fortification ou un aménagement prévu, des planifications, etc., des places publiques, des zones ouvertes, etc.?
Disons, par rapport justement à l'urbanisme contemporain de ces tumulus, ces nécropoles, donc disons, il y a une constatation, ils sont très rares par rapport justement là. Dans le Mira, il y a une abondance de ces formes, alors que dans le Djbel Bani, il y a très peu justement de cas confirmés de prix islamique ou protohistorique. Celui-là, c'est un des rares. Donc, disons, le seul élément, disons, clair dans cet urbanisme, c'est qu'il n'y a pas de mur rectiligne. On n'a que des lignes curvilignes. Donc, il n'y a pas d'angle droit. Donc, ça, c'est un constat déjà qu'on a remarqué aussi du côté du Mitra. Donc, disons, le site a été prospecté une journée. Et donc, disons, on dispose de très peu d'éléments. Tout ce qu'on a, c'est les préliminaires. Et donc, j'envisage que la prochaine mission, on va approfondir justement la recherche sur ce volet d'urbanisme pré-islamique historique.
So it's cemeteries and tombs that are normally found nearby, these perch sites or sort of hill fortifications, but these sort of types of settlement are very rare in the Djbel Bani area, as opposed to other parts of the Sahara. And so it's, as you could see from the plan, it's quite well organized with fortification walls and so on, but they did not spend very long there. So this is one of the targets for work next year. We now have some questions about irrigation. So Louise Rain says, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Can you tell us more about the irrigation systems? And related to that is a similar question, but in more detail, from Sabi Jawadi, who thanks you both again for this insightful talk, and wants to know, did you identify any ancient hydraulic systems, Foggara, wadi dams, and so on? That's the question one. Second, the water which feeds the current Akka oasis, is it just from the Wadi Akka? And then finally, are there any permanent water sources or ancient lakes where it might be possible to recover a paleoecological chronology, in particular sediments from the long Holocene? So I don't know if Sam, you might want to take.
Yeah, I'll start that one in terms of Tamdult. So I mentioned the fossil agriculture, forest, and indeed irrigation systems. Patrice Cressier's early work did look at that to start looking at that basically that larger landscape between Akka and the mound at Tamdult. So we have not yet looked in detail at this, but that is a key element of the next phase of work. But indeed, you have quite good evidence for the bringing of water sources from Akka through right through that valley landscape. So water channels, land parcels. So quite a good detailed evidence, including some of the drone work we've done, really shows how we can map that quite well. In terms of the questions regarding Akka, which a little bit more complex, I don't actually have the full information, or I don't have the very clear answers to that at the moment. Youssef, do you have in sense of the Akka water systems, are you able to?
Disons, les prospections qu'on a faites sur la terrasse alluviale, disons, on a remarqué pas mal on a identifié pas mal des structures hydrauliques, donc notamment les grosses canalisations qui ramenaient l'eau vers les zones agricoles. Disons, les photos satellites et les photos aériennes qu'on a faites montrent que, disons, à part the Mound of Tamdult, qui est une concentration urbaine, donc l'image qu'on peut avoir du centre de Tamdult, c'est une ville éparpillée dans la plaine, avec pas mal de casbahs, avec leur jardin à côté. Et donc, il y a un système de réseau, disons, d'irrigation qui alimente justement ces casbahs et alimente justement les jardins. Et donc, d'après les textes aussi, donc Tamdult, il mentionne Tamdult pas uniquement en tant que centre minier, mais aussi comme centre d'agriculture où les caravanes venaient s'approvisionner avant d'attaquer la traversée du Sahara vers Odaros.
So there is an extensive network of irrigation and so on that, whilst this hasn't been the focus of this project, they've done work which shows that it's sort of very lots of field systems and terraces connected to the Casbahs. Mais Youssef, est-ce que pour l'eau, c'est seulement l'eau le wet, du wet, ou est-ce qu'il y a des fogares et des puits?
Non, il n'y a pas de fogares, uniquement des sources. Il n'y a pas de fogares dans la zone.
So it's only the spring and the water.
Les sources, c'est l'oued.
Yeah, it's only the body.
Ils ont capté une source qui est à 12 km plus au nord vers le Djbel Bani.
And then finally, Youssef, est-ce qu'il y a une paleo lake ou quelque chose comme ça où est possible de faire la géoarchéologie pour...
Oui, il y a des paléolacs. Ouais. Ce qu'on appelle les feijas, c'est un terme local donc qui désigne des paléolacs, des accumulations d'eau dans des cuvettes avec beaucoup d'argile qui permet l'imperméabilité et que justement ces eaux stagnent au moins plusieurs mois d'année.
So yeah, so there are some paleo lakes in the area where sort of ancient sediment has emerged, but I'm not sure if there's sort of contemporary water sources in the hills still. Okay.
This is it. Yeah, this is identifying a key area for the coming period of research. It's not something we've sufficiently focused on so far, but building on Patrice Cressier's earlier work, this is a key element of the next phase of work.
And then I think we just have two final questions. So one, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, from Magic Kazapski, who again says fantastic work. And have you discovered any artifacts dated to the Roman period? Est-ce qu'il y a des artifacts?
Non, du tout.
So no, not at all. But obviously those perch sites are probably date to the first millennium CE. But there's no evidence of the Romans or Roman ceramics anywhere in this part of the Sahara. And then final question from Kevin MacDonald, who says Ibn Halkul in 967 mentions Tamdult as an itinerary point from Al-Dagust. If this is not Tel Tamdult or the Casbahs in the valley, do you think that 10th century Tamdult was actually somewhere beneath Akka?
Yeah. Donc, disons, les sondages que Patrice Cressier a fait dans les années 90 et les sondages que nous faisons actuellement sur le monticule de Tamdult donc n'ont pas donné des évidences claires par rapport à des niveaux almoravides ou almohades ou idrissides. Et donc, si on fait référence au texte, la description de Bekri et deux autres sur Tamdult ne correspondent pas à l'emplacement actuel du monticule de Tamdult. Il pourrait correspondre à l'endroit où il y a la tour sur laquelle on a fait le sondage cette année, 2020. Donc la tour d'Aqqa. Donc la tour avec une architecture et une décoration qui ressemble aux tours de la Piralda, de la Koutoubia et de la tour Hassan Araba. Donc probablement, c'est dans cette zone-là qu'il faudra intensifier les sondages dans l'intention d'identifier ou d'arriver à identifier des niveaux, disons, du Haut Moyen-Âge.
So this is a very big problematic in the work of Cressier, who did various sondages, Tamdult and in Akka, and then now the work that Youssef and Sam are doing together really hasn't found anything before the Almoravid, or anything secure before the Almoravid Almohad period. So Youssef is suggesting that near the Tower of Akka, that's the place to excavate, to try and find those important layers of the early Middle Ages, particularly the 9th and 10th century. And I'm sure that they're there somewhere. We just have to hope you find them.
and just to add as well, in terms of Akka, there's various sites overlooking Akka, fortified sites, which we've identified as well recently. So during the during the next seasons to return to those as well. So they could be part of that, whatever that Tamdult represents as well. But clearly it's there's also still remaining, to finalize the kind of chronology of those fortified structures in the valley near to the mound site.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. We are now out of time. So I'd just like to thank Youssef and Sam again for a really fantastic work on a fascinating project, and we will definitely all be watching with bated breath for what you find in the coming years, and hopefully you can come back and talk to us about your findings then. So meanwhile, just before we finish by sort of thanking virtually, as it were, our speakers, I'd just like to announce the next lecture for the Society, which will be held on April the 6th at the same time at 5 p.m. And we will be hearing from our colleague, Dr. Ahmed Enraj, all the way from Libya, who is currently in Libya, and he will be talking about, on a talk called From Ohio to Cyrenaica, Libyan Archaeological Heritage Matters, a general account of recent archaeological activities of a Libyan archaeologist. So again, another really exciting talk coming up. So please do register for that and share it widely with your colleagues and friends. But for now, thank you from us, and thank you to Youssef and Sam once more.
Thank you for everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah,
and thank you, Farzan.
So good weekend. Yeah, and good health.
Very important for everyone.
yeah.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to close the meeting now. Bye-bye.
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 Ciao, ciao.